Do goats look to us for help? Scientists have long known that some animals that have been bred to interact with humans, such as dogs and horses, will make eye contact to communicate with their human companions. A recent study by scientists at Queen Mary University of London examined whether goats, animals that have been bred as livestock rather than as companions or working animals, could also utilize eye contact. In the study, goats were habituated to friendly interactions with humans. They were trained to open a transparent plastic box to retrieve food. So here I need to decide the correct fragment, and the way it's written is not correct because this part is an independent sentence. Goats were habituated to friendly interactions with humans, and they were trained to open a transparent plastic box. That's another independent sentence, so I can't have a comma between them. Now, if I say goats were habituated to friendly interactions with humans and trained to open a transparent plastic box, then that's correct because that combines the sentences with a conjunction and conveys the right meaning. So I like B. Goats were habituated to friendly interactions with humans and being trained. This being introduces a continuous sense to the sentence, which is not established in the first half. So it's not C. And goats were habituated to friendly interactions with humans, comma, were training to open or transparent. That distorts the meaning because I need to say that they were trained, right? I need to use the passive voice. So B is the best answer. The goats were then divided into two groups and placed one at a time in a pen with an experimenter who put food into an unopenable box, leaving the food visible but impassable. Okay, so they were placed in a pen with an experimenter who put food. So the way it's written is correct. I'm defining the experimenter by the fact that he put food into a box. So I like option A. Now, if I put commas around who, then that would make who non-essential, and that is wrong because I need to understand what the experimenter did. So it can't be B. I can't have a colon in the middle of a sentence, so option C is wrong. And I can't have a semicolon because the part after the semicolon, who put food, is not an independent sentence. So it's A. So an experimenter who put food into an unopenable box, leaving the food visible but impassable. So I'm basically trying to say that the goats could see the food, but they couldn't reach it, right? So the best answer for that would be inaccessible. They could not access the food. So I like B. Impassable would mean something that you can't pass, right? So that doesn't make sense because I'm not able to access the food, right? It's not about passing, so it's not A. Insurmountable would be used for a problem that's too hard to be surmounted, that's too hard to be solved, so that doesn't fit the context of food. And unapproachable, unapproachable is used in the context of a person who is hard to approach, right? Somebody who comes across as unfriendly. So that doesn't fit the context of food either. So inaccessible is the best answer. For goats in the first group, the experimenter then continued to look at the food box, his face fully visible to the goats. For goats in the second group, the experimenter turned his back on the food box, a position that prevented the goats from seeing his face. Some goats were unable to complete training trials before the tests began and could not be used in the experiment. Previous studies showed that dogs and horses in similar situations would use directed gazes towards humans to request help, and researchers were curious whether the goats would do the same. Now, which choice provides the most effective introduction to the paragraph? So the way it's written is not a good introduction because I'm trying to say that, researchers were interested in whether the goats would look towards the experimenters and, direct their gaze at the experimenter in the same way that dogs and the horses do. So that is what the researchers were interested in. So the fact that some goats were unable to complete the trials is not relevant. Each goat was monitored so that researchers could see how it would react upon being unable to retrieve the food. So this is relevant because it kind of tells me what the researchers were trying to observe. When cats have been tested in similar experiments, they have tended not to perform as well as dogs or horses. So now I'm talking about cats here, which is not relevant because I need to introduce the paragraph by speaking of goats. The goats had been given access to hay before the experiment began, so they were not necessarily hungry. So again, this doesn't make sense because the whole point of the experiment is to kind of get them to request food by using their gaze and whether they are able to do that. So why would the experiment try to not keep them hungry? So B is a good introduction because it kind of tells me that the researchers wanted to see how the goats reacted. And then it says that previous studies had shown that dogs and horses do look to the experimenter to request help. And researchers were curious whether the goats would do the same. So the way it's written is correct. It's formal and it indicates what the researchers set out to do. So I like A. The researchers couldn't wait to find out. That's rather informal. The researchers were fixated on, no, that's to be fixated on something is to have an unhealthy obsession with something. So that's wrong. And they were dying to know is also informal, right? So options B and D will not work in a formal text. So A. The researchers analyzed gaze latency, how long it took the goats to look at the experimenter, frequency, how often they did so, and duration, how long the gazes lasted for goats in each of the two groups. Now here I need to decide the correct punctuation. So I'm saying they analyzed gaze latency, and then I'm explaining that, comma, frequency, explaining that, and duration, right? So this semicolon doesn't make sense because I'm using commas to separate items on the list. So it would be a closing parenthesis after so and a comma, right? So this is how it would be, and the and will come after the comma, right? So it will be C. Option A is wrong because it has a semicolon, and option D is wrong because it has a colon. And option B is wrong because this comma needs to come before and, because I'm saying that these were the three items: latency, frequency, and duration. So C is the best answer. Whether or not the experimenter faced the food box had a large effect on the goat's behavior, the researchers found. So here I need to talk about the noun, right? A large effect on the goat's behavior. So the noun begins with E, effect. Effect is the verb, right? So for example, how you affect the process. That is when you say a, because here affect is the verb. But we are looking at the large effect. So it will be E. And with effect, you use the preposition on, a large effect on the goat's behavior. So D is the best answer. When the experimenter was facing away, the goats barely looked in his direction. The researchers obtained a median result of 0 for gaze duration and 5.14 for gaze frequency. Okay, which choice provides accurate data from the table? So I'm talking about the experimenter facing away. So I'm looking at this one. And the researchers obtained a median result of 0 for gaze duration and even frequency, it was 0. So the way it's written is not right. So 0 for both gaze duration and gaze frequency. So D would be the right answer. 2.5 for gaze duration and 29.39 for gaze frequency. Those are wrong. Likewise, when the experimenter faced the food box, the goats tended to look at him multiple times. The median number of gazes was 2.5, and hold each gaze. The median duration of these gazes was 2.5 seconds. Okay, so here I'm talking about the group where the experimenter was facing the goats, right? So this is obviously a contrast to the group where the experimenter was facing away. So I can't say likewise, because likewise is used when you're talking about a similar thing. So in contrast is a good answer because I'm presenting a contrast between the two groups. So I like B. Regardless is used when you're saying that you don't need to consider what has been said before, right? So regardless of what he said, I'm going to go ahead and finish the proposal. So that doesn't make sense here because I'm trying to compare the two data sets. So it's not C. And in particular is used to stress a particular point in a data set, right? So that doesn't make sense because I'm presenting the information about the other group, right? So I'm not presenting a particular information from the first data group. So it's not D. The best answer is B. Now here I need to choose the correct value, and I'm saying that for the first group, the median duration was 5.14, not 2.5. So more than 5 would be the best answer. It's not almost 30. It's not 0. These differences suggest that the potential for eye contact was important in prompting the animal's gaze. The results are surprising according to Laurie Santos, a specialist in animal cognition at Yale University, because the goats were distinct from the other animals that have demonstrated such behaviors, having been bred not as companion animals, but as livestock. So here I need to decide the correct fragment. The goats were distinct from the other animals that have demonstrated such behavior, having been bred not as companion animals, but as livestock. So this is a dependent segment. So that needs to come after the comma. So the way it's written is correct. If I say they have been bred not as companion animals, but as livestock, then that becomes an independent sentence. So I can't put it after a comma. If I say having been bred, then as I said, it's dependent. So a semicolon can't come here because a semicolon can only come between two independent sentences. And if I say the goats were distinct from the other animals and having been bred, that's not correct because if I put and, then I would expect the part after that to be independent, which having been bred, etc. is not. So A is the best answer. Okay, let's grade this. Number 12. BABBA, BABBA 17, CDDBCA, CDDBCA. Okay, great. So we got all correct.